Okay, so welcome to Picky Bastards. This is the March 2018 episode, and this is the show where three music fans pretend to be friends while discussing our mutual contempt for a load of new music. And I want to welcome Matt Paul in New York.
Hello.
Say hello.
Mr. Paul. Hi.
And Fran Slater and myself.
We are in the same room.
Oh, we are, yes. I'm Nick. How's it going? And this month we will be discussing Rhye. Is it pronounced Rhye? Is that right?
I think so.
Rhye's album
I
Blood.
think so.
We've got the Go Team's album Semicircle, Jay Som's Everybody Works, Princess Nokia's 1992 Deluxe. Then we're doing a classic, which is Nick Drake's 1969 album 5 Leaves Left. And then I'll be telling you all why I love Dinosaur Jr., but specifically with the album You're Living All Over Me. Okay, so before we got going, I asked you a couple of questions, which I'll put to you again, see what you think. Matt, first of all, which of the 5 albums is the most coherent? Whether it's ultimately good or bad, it's not a big deal, but which is the most coherent for you?
I felt it was Rhye's album. It seemed like
just put that out there.
Yeah.
You called it.
Well, I think it's obviously the most coherent anyway.
It is.
Because it's got there's no songs that stick out as being like odd thumbs or anything like that. There's to get all together, it seems to work as one piece.
Okay.
And it has kind of like a kind of consistent tone to it. Whether that's good or bad, I'm still on the fence about.
Oh.
I couldn't make my mind up about this album.
Okay.
Interesting.
I don't think that's permitted, actually, I've got to say.
Yeah, that's not really.
Well,
You're not allowed to
music
not
podcast,
make your mind up. Jesus, this is what Picky Bastards. Come
By
on.
the time me and Nick have finished speaking about it, you have to make a decision.
Yeah, you got another 2 minutes.
Otherwise,
It's not as good as the first album. Let's put it that way.
I don't know the first album, actually, yeah.
I do,
So
I do.
okay, can you give me some context then? When was the first album out and what was that like?
So the first album was that must be about 5-6 years ago, I think.
saw them at a festival in Lisbon, maybe 3 years ago, and I think the album was quite recent then. So yeah, it was good.
Yeah.
He's very interesting live.
Yeah, and so and like the first album is fantastic, and I feel like at the time it was like quite different because there wasn't as much kind of just someone with that voice that's so great with very like bare and minimal music behind it, at least in the like current scene. But now there's more of that style of music, and I don't think he did as good a job this time. And so it just felt like everything was very precise in the music to a point where it was too controlled. Like in the first album he released, it felt like he could break at any point, but this he felt you could feel the emotion, but he still felt like he had control over everything.
Okay, and that's the problem you're saying, just to be clear.
Well, yeah, because it's a very, very emotional music, right? And to convey that, I feel like you have to be on, like, if you're on the edge at the same time, it means so much more.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's almost too
mean
polished.
there, yeah.
It's almost too polished.
So that, in that sense, the coherence as a general thing is not good. I mean, the fact that it's coherent in that sense, if it's that polished and kind of put together, that's a problem.
Yeah. That's where I was going from.
Right.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
I mean,
Fran, what do
I'll
you
go
reckon?
in with this one. I mean, polished is a word that I've also written down, definitely, and it is a very polished album. It's a very clean album in some ways, but I don't think I agree that it's as sort of it's coherent, but whether it's samey to the point where it doesn't, I don't know, because I think that it's maybe compared to the first album, there's a bit more variation there for me. I think there was a bit more sort of a funk element to some of the songs. I enjoy the sort of very like laid back atmosphere of it, and that he doesn't. I can't remember the first album if I ever felt like he was close to sort of breaking. He always felt like a very polished performer to me. I think so. I enjoyed this album a lot. I got really into. I listened to it more as we went on. I think it's really incredibly produced. His voice is amazing. Now, one thing we talked about a lot on the last podcast was Glenn Hansard's terrible lyrics. I just want to remind everybody about those terrible lyrics.
Oh yeah, no. I totally agree.
How to forget?
They come back to me sometimes in the night.
Desire and Fire and all that business.
Yep.
But And I wouldn't say Rye's lyrics are that much better.
No.
But I think what stands out there is I don't think you're there as much for the lyrics. I think you're here for the music, and I think the atmosphere it creates is really interesting. So the lyrics kind of fade into the background and aren't that important to me. But before I move on, I want to make one more sort of comment and a prediction more than anything. My prediction is that Nick's about to speak about this album. My prediction is he absolutely fucking despises it.
Wow. And he even swore. That's how vehement he is on the subject.
Yeah.
He actually swore.
Is he right?
Okay. Well, I will say that this podcast shouldn't turn into just an attempt to predict what the other people's going to think. But anyway, that doesn't mean he's wrong, though. No, I
Told you.
I did have a problem with this album. I felt like I think you both raised things that are relevant to my issues with it. I thought lyrically it was pretty poor. I don't know this artist at all before, so I've never heard of him. So I know nothing. I have no context for that. That's what I was asking. But lyrically, it was very weak. I thought, or pretty weak. But musically, it was really irritating. I found it incredibly annoying. And the thing that really pissed me off about it, see, we're all swearing now. We're going to get
Calm down, man. It's called Picky Bastards, though. So
yeah, that's true. That is true. The thing that really annoyed me about it was how staccato everything was. When you talk about the polish and the sort of coherence of it all and how restrained and controlled it was, man, I think that's totally true. It was so like on off. Everything was like da, 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 da. It just drove me insane. It was like a really bad 90s phone ringing, like mobile phone
really
ringing.
bad 90s phone ringing.
Yeah, okay. That's what it was like. Right. Yeah, I mean, his voice was great. Or the voices were great in it. I'm not trying to dispute that, but what they were saying wasn't that great, and how they produced it was just too much.
Okay.
So sorry, I'm not a fan.
So I was right.
You were right.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Okay, so we had a little bit of a technical nightmare there, but we have fixed things, I think. So we are back up and running.
It's all Matt's fault.
It was Matt's fault, I'm sure. Always. So let's go back into it. Okay, so next question. I wanted to ask Fran, which of the 5 albums had the strongest opening? And as with the last question, it doesn't really matter if it's the best album, just the opening. That's what I'm interested in. Go for it.
I'll tell you straight away that I found this quite a difficult question because I really liked 3, maybe 4 of the albums on this playlist. But I didn't think any of them had a really, really strong opening.
Okay.
But I've chosen one, and I went with Princess Nokia's 1992 Deluxe, because although the first song's maybe not a best song on the album, well, it's not by quite a way, but I think she did the best job of sort of setting out a stall and showing us what she's all about within her first few songs. So Bart Simpson's the opening track, and I think it really highlights the themes of her album. So it sort of looks back at her childhood, a lot of nostalgia, and she talks a lot about New York and when she grew up. And then straight after that song, so I would still consider this the opening in a way, she goes into Tomboy, which is a sort of really interesting song which kind of subverts the idea of the male gaze and typical ideas of beauty. And for a song that uses the word titties so many times, it is quite a strong, positive feminist song, I would say. And then she continues into the third song with Katana, this was another strong feminist song in a lot of ways, but maybe people might have missed that because it's named after a Mortal Kombat character. I don't know if either of you were aware of that.
No.
But she was.
I thought it was named after the sword. But...
No, Katana was the first ever female ninja in a video game.
Right.
Which at the time was seen as a really big thing. In like the gaming world, and Princess Nokia is obviously comparing herself to Katana in that song. She's sort of a ninja of rap sort of thing, which I thought was quite interesting.
Nice.
And it was also, again, in a way, talking about openings, it was the album that grabbed me most immediately. I don't know if it ended up being my favourite, but it was the one that was most interesting to me straight away. Like I kind of had to stop what I was reading on the train and actually really listen to this album, which some of the others, because there is some like slow albums on this playlist, and I could kind of let them drift, and it took me a while to get into them, but this one grabbed me straight away. And then particularly, I'm going to mention one song, which was Goth Kid, which is like a strong, sometimes quite amusing way of looking back at a really difficult childhood, where she talks a lot about being abused in a foster home and that kind of thing, but she manages to make it funny and witty and interesting. And I thought that kind of, you could say that about most of the album. So yeah, that would be my strongest opening, and also I think arguably definitely one of the strongest albums on this playlist. I really enjoyed it.
Okay. So I might jump in actually, if that's all right with you, Matt.
Go for it.
Something really unusual's happened to me just now, which is I think Fran might have persuaded me to like an album a bit more than I did initially, which is kind of a shock. But I'll start though with my traditional Fran is wrong mode and say this is the album with the weakest opening of any of them. I still hold to that. Bart Simpson is such a weak track compared to the rest of the album. It's really remarkable. So you've taken the word opening to consist of like the first half of the album.
No, the first three songs. Man. The first three songs.
Okay, maybe. But I mean, one thing I noticed with the Bart Simpson track that I thought was really problematic was she had some real problems with the flow, like the actual breathing, like shortness of breath in some of the tracks. Did you notice that? Did anyone else? Did you notice that, Matt?
No. Well,
I was in that first track in particular. There was a couple of times, but in that first track in particular, she seemed to be like running out of steam as halfway through some of the lines. I felt like.
I think some of that might be down to the sort of the end sort of product and the production that she hasn't, like a lot of other artists have. There's not as much sort of work done it after the fact. She's kind of
it's very lo-fi, you mean? In a sense.
I mean, you might say that. I would say I don't really know what that means whenever you say that, but I just nod my head.
Okay. So assume I'm right then. If you don't know, just assume I'm right because I do know.
But I think that might be part of it. I mean, I think the delivery is brilliant a lot of the time. I didn't really notice that. I can see on Bart Simpson that it's not the strongest first song, but then I'd say every album on this playlist. So I think you asked me a question that you just knew I couldn't answer because none of them had a good opening song.
Yeah. I would really struggle to pick out something that really had a strong beginning to draw you in. Nothing really grabbed me.
Okay. I just want to point out before we go any further that I did a playlist about Sebadoh, a seminal lo-fi band, in which I described for about 20 minutes what lo-fi is. Fran was clearly not listening to me.
I was asleep.
Which is no surprise, but there you go. I just want to, before Matt gets into it with the album, I just wanted to say though that I initially was not that impressed either with the beats. I felt like it was quite thin, I felt like it didn't really hit me very hard, the beats, which is kind of disappointing. But I can see from what Fran's just said, I'm willing to be educated on the subject on this one and feel like maybe it's worth more of a go. Because I thought some of the things he's bringing out about the feminist themes and stuff are actually really interesting. So I feel like maybe I'm not giving it due credit. So maybe I've actually been swayed by Fran.
Well, there you go. I do think, to go back to what you're saying about the production now, I mean, I think it is... I've read articles saying like if she was produced by Rhye or Kendrick or whatever, would she be God, don't mention him. Don't mention him.
But he did put Butterfly, didn't he? So yeah.
But I've heard that said. But I mean, I quite like the sort of more. Can I say lo-fi? I don't know what it means. I like the more lo-fi production. I like the more sort of basic. I wouldn't like it on every album, but I think it works with her. But anyway, let's hear from Matt.
Go for it, Matt.
Maybe now you remember what lo-fi is.
In future, yeah.
I just didn't connect with this album at all.
Did you not?
No. There are a few.
This is Matt's first I don't like an album, I think. Yeah. I really don't like an album.
And I'm surprised, actually.
Congratulations. Welcome to the club properly now.
You finally a picky bastard.
I felt like a lot of it was just like posturing, and there's a few songs that stuck out. Like Goth Kid was cool because there was a bit more going on, but I don't really like listening to just someone say they're going to beat someone else up or they're going to put a curse on someone. Like it's
what are you talking about? That sounds amazing.
There is a lot of posturing in the album, and that is a typical sort of hip hop thing, though, isn't it? Which isn't always the best side of hip hop, but I think she was deeper than that a lot as well.
Yeah, I just didn't see because I know I listen to hip hop and there's a whole bunch of stuff about that, and that's fine, and it can be good. I just don't think there was enough variation away from that.
How would this compare to Scissor? SZA. We talked about that last
a great
time.
album.
Oh, I haven't listened to that album.
Okay, right. We talked about it a couple of sessions ago.
We talked about the albums of the year. I mean, for me, this is what I actually... I'm not surprised you brought up that comparison because I do think they are both albums that talk about some sort of facile stuff that we could throw away and ignore, but also both have quite strong messages in the background.
I think this one is better than that one personally, but that's just, maybe we don't need to get into it if Matt is not familiar anyway. So
I'm quite surprised with your opinion of it though, Matt. To be honest, I did. I predict everything, and I was right about Nick, but I was obviously wrong about this one. I thought you would. I thought you'd like it.
Well, some of the songs I do like. It's just as an album as a whole, it's just I felt towards the end I was just getting bored, because it felt like the same stuff coming up. Even some of the I did like Katana and I did like Brujas, but again, it's still like the central theme it's talking about like in Brujas, it's talking about like witches and like some of the different ancestry and her ancestors, but it all comes back to, and it's like the central theme of she's gonna mess someone up with her witchcraft. And so like you could talk about something else regarding the witchcraft or the.
Do you want spells? Do you want what do you want from it?
Just like
how to turn
a bit more interesting than like I'm going to get one over using it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think I can see that, and I'm defending the album in that I did enjoy it, but I do think it's an early career thing for her, and I actually think there's potential more than there's absolute mastery on this album. Like, I think it's interesting. I think she's got a lot to say.
First album, by the way.
It's a third album, but the albums previously, one of them was apparently, I've not heard it, but a very sort of weak sort of R&B album where she sang everything, and she had a different name because her real name's Destiny something. And she went under that name.
Her name's
before.
not Princess Nokia. I'm so disappointed. Nothing to say.
I can't come back to that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so she's apparently this is her first sort of. Maybe you're like the earliest stuff, Matt, because she was apparently very quiet and nice on that and didn't talk about wanting to kill people. So maybe you should go listen to the
I don't know. Maybe it's unfair to compare it to the Nas record last month.
It is unfair. That's true.
But like. It's obviously in New York, and he managed to paint a super evocative portrayal of New York and being a young black man living in New York at that time. And I didn't get anything.
See, I got a lot of I'm gonna agree with you to a degree. Like, I think this album could have been cut down by 8 songs, and it might have been more. Because if you think about the Nas song, the album, what's impressive about that as well as a hip hop album is it's only 10 songs long. Hip hop albums are always stupidly long. Nas nailed that there. But if Princess Nokia would cut it down and use maybe songs like Saggy Denim, Green Line, ABCs of New York, and Goth Kid, the ones where she's actually talking about something, this would be a stronger album. We don't need songs like Excellent, where she talks about how much she likes to cook. I'm not going to argue that, but I think maybe
it is a long album. I think that's true. Looking at the list right now, it's like 12, what was it, 15, 14 songs or something?
It's a lot of songs.
Yeah,
and I think she could have cut it down, and it would have been a more effective album. But I think there's enough good stuff on there for me to be definitely listening to more of what she does in the future. But also, she does posture a bit too much.
Yeah. Okay, so some disagreement and Matt's inaugural hatred of an album.
Well done, Matt.
Fantastic, yeah.
Coming out your shell now.
So let's talk about. I don't really mind which one we go into now. There's 3 left before we get into the Why I Love. So do you want to talk about your least favorite, Fran?
Me. Okay.
From the 5, not including the one Why I Love.
I can do that, and I'm going to fight with Matt again now because he told me at the end of the last one that I would like this album, and he was very wrong. My worst was the Go Team Semicircle. Definitely the only album on this list that I can guarantee I will never listen to again. I mean, my main question is like, why does anyone need this much cheer in their life? Why does anyone need to be this chirpy?
That's why I suggested it.
I felt like I was listening.
Like you need some happiness.
I felt like I was listening to the Chipmunks.
Oh,
I felt like the Chipmunks had grown up and they'd released this.
Right.
And that's all I have to say. Sorry, Matt. I know you like that.
That's literally it.
Yeah, I'm done.
It's got like 3 comments in 30 seconds.
I've got no other things to say. I couldn't get on board.
Why don't you defend, Matt, if you want to defend? I mean, you hadn't heard the album before, had you? Because that's the rules. So you only knew the band, yeah?
Yeah.
So, okay, well then give us your objective opinion then.
Well, yeah, it's very like saccharine. The whole thing is sickly sweet and happy. But I think considering all the shit that's going on, it's nice to have that occasionally. and have like a superficial band that's just there to
Sorry, are you
have a
saying
good
this?
time.
Are you saying there's something bad going on in the world? I'm confused.
Yeah,
what are you talking about?
Can you be more specific?
Well, everything's going swimmingly as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
But yeah, like one of the lyrics in their main single Semicircle is "Live More, Care Less," and that's I think just the whole mantra of the band, and has always been that.
No, and I'm not having it.
And
I'm not having
I'm
it.
not having that as a saying. I'm not
just
having.
vetoed it. You just
I'm not
vetoed
having
the
"live
choice.
more, care less" as a saying. It's not acceptable.
Fight back, Matt. Come on.
Not in this time.
and it
Kick
worked.
his ass.
Like this wasn't my favorite album on the list, but I also thought it was a great. Just like I'd put it on, I'm in a bad mood, and then I'm in a good mood. And it had the capacity to completely change how I was feeling.
It did change my
Wasn't
mood every time I listened to it.
Yeah.
That's great.
And yeah, like the whole thing of like the marching band element, I really enjoyed the like steel drums. I love.
Fran is
and
just grimacing and shaking his head every time you say something. Yeah.
And it was actually the first time in at least a couple albums, I think, they had one of their old vocalists back.
Which chipmunk was it, Alvin or Theodore?
Did you like any of the songs? What was your song that you could bear?
Don't ask me this question. No.
No, there's not.
No.
Wow. Wow.
No.
Okay, can I interject then and give you some comments from me? If that's all right. Am I allowed to be in this podcast or what? The two of you just fighting over the line. Okay, so I actually wrote down the word chirpy as well on my notes. But I will add to that and say that this album was somehow irresistibly chirpy. You won't believe it, but I actually thought this album was all right. I thought it was all right. It was so irresistibly like powerful with its kind of bouncy energy that you just felt it was one of those albums where you just found yourself like, sounds so cliche, but sort of foot tapping as you listen to it. It's true. I just everything from the exclamation mark on the word "go" on down.
God, that just upsets me.
You hate that as well. I knew you'd hate that as well. No, it was just it had
Semicircles in capital letters. Sorry, but it's the album title is in capital letters.
It did actually. I'll tell you what it reminded me of, and this is high praise, but I don't think this is entirely fair, but still,
I might walk out.
Is a bit of early Yeah Yeahs. Like off the first album, I thought like the way that it had some delay on the vocals and that short delay, slapback delay on the vocals was quite similar to Karen O's voice in the album, and it had that kind of exuberance. I think the Yeah Yeahs honestly is a massively better album, but still, I think there's an interesting connection there, you know. So I'm gonna side with Matt, and Fran's wrong. I think this album's all right.
Anybody listening, I want you to as soon as it finishes, listen to the song "If There's One Thing You Should Know" by the Go Team, and if you find that anything more than the most irritating thing you've ever heard, it's over between us.
It's exuberant. That's all I can say. So, and then I thought the production was really interesting. The way the drums were set really far back with tons of like reverb, sort of crunchy kind of reverb sounding. So anyway, it sounded very sounded like a big party was going on throughout the entire album, and you were just invited for like half an hour to be part of it.
Well, I got the
did
right
that one,
prediction
Fran,
right.
did you?
I definitely predicted what Nick would think of this album, and that was not it. I mean,
Yeah, you totally got that one wrong.
yeah,
Nice.
That makes me so happy.
I'm sad.
Okay, so why don't I talk about
that was
my favourite? Should I do that?
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so
We've not talked about it yet.
we haven't, no. My favourite, this is still not including obviously the Dinosaur Jr. we'll talk about later, is the Nick Drake album, 5 Leaves Left. This is, I think I pointed out last time, it's the classic album. It's the oldest album we've had, a 69, I think it is. I thought this album, I would say that I've listened to Pink Moon, his other one, his more well-known one, quite a bit, and I really love that album. This one was not quite of the caliber of that one. This is not quite as well formed, but first of all, it was produced, especially given the time, and I don't think he had a ton of resources behind it, to a really stunning quality. I thought his voice sounds so close and kind of intimate and touching. It's really remarkable. There was some. I have to say, some of the accompaniment was a little bit dated.
Are you going to talk about the flute?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about the flute. Yeah, the flute was a little bit of a hard one to swallow, honestly.
That was on Thoughts of Mary Jane.
Thoughts of Mary Jane. There was also a xylophone on Saturday Sun, both of which are just, I mean, it was not so much that I hated them so much as they dated the album a lot. We talked about albums being dated or not dated last time. And these were the points in the album when I thought, wow, this was done in the late 60s or even earlier. But a lot of the album sounded really fresh, actually, and especially given the quality of the production, as I said, it sounded like he was really present with us. And I'll mention as well that one of the challenges I had, with the album in general, is he's got a stunning voice. He's got an absolutely beautiful voice, but and a very sort of heartbreaking tone. But I don't know if anyone's aware. I assume the two of you know of him and know a little bit about his story. He had a very, very tough time of it and died very young.
He was a bit of a isolated guy, wasn't he, as well?
He was, yeah. And I don't know if you know much about him, Matt, do you?
No.
Okay,
no,
so,
I've heard of him.
Okay, yeah. So
listened to nothing.
He died. He only really did a couple of albums and some other bits of recordings, from what I understand, and died very young. He had mental health issues, and there's a dispute over how he actually died. Down. But I know. But my point, reason I raise it is it was actually, it's hard for me to separate my sort of sympathy with that state, and that must be awful for him to have gone through that, to write in this beautiful music, and just feel like, can I have an objective opinion over this music when I'm so moved by it? You know, I'm moved by it, and I'm moved by his story. So all I'm saying is that it makes me feel like I'm not a very objective judge of this, and that's fascinating, you know. But
I think this is what music should do, isn't it? I think you shouldn't. I mean, obviously we're doing a podcast about music. You've got to be objective, but I think if an album moves you.
Yeah, all I mean is the context of the album moving me more than the music? That's what I'm wondering. You know, I'm wondering, can I trust my opinion of it? Well,
if it still moves you, then it moves you.
Yeah,
I think. A lot of people who got into sorry, Matt, but a lot of people who got into, say, Nirvana. Later on. Yeah, when they went around, why do you think people get into them? Because Kurt Cobain killed himself and had that really fucked up life, and they see that as a way in. So I don't really see that as a problem personally. But
I think it just means you have like a cheat sheet to understand the context. But it means you probably know the music even better.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe you can't apply it to what you've got going on in your own life in quite as a stronger way, because you can't make it more abstract. But
I know what you mean. So what do you think about the album in general, though, Matt? Do you want to talk about it now?
I really enjoyed it. I interestingly, the way you were talking about how, compared to what we were talking about last month, about how some of the albums were dated.
And we're writing down the same notes, guys. You're all taking my words.
But I think it's pretty. I wrote down timeless for most of it.
Oh, really?
I thought it was some of it was fantastic, and the strings that went with some of the songs lended it like a real cinematic tone that added a lot more gravity to what he was saying, and he had a lot of gravitas already.
I think, it's interesting you said, just to interject for 1 second, I think one of the interesting things about was that these big productions on this first album, which were less apparent on Pink Moon than more famous next album, I thought actually didn't suit it quite as well as just when it's just him and a guitar. I mean, it's just because that's the intimacy of it, you know? So I'm interested when you say about that sort of gravitas. I think that's an interesting way of putting it, you know?
Yeah. I can imagine, like, I obviously haven't listened to Pink Moon, but it seemed to make the strings seem to make it more dramatic, but that also would distance you from him, I guess, in a way.
Right.
From what he's. I also like The Man in the Shed. Made me smile every time I listened to it, because it reminded me of like Toy Story or something. It was kind of cheesy, but like in a really sweet way.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed that a lot as well.
Yeah. No, it was really a great album. Yeah. Well, Fran, what do you want to say?
So
make sure you don't repeat anything we've said.
Well, I'm gonna go straight into the idea of the datedness, or how things date, because we talked a lot about how hip hop dates, and okay, if we bring in the flute and those sort of things, you're right, they did date it a little bit, but if you just take this album as a whole, it didn't seem dated, and I think I started to think about why that might be, and I think a big part of it is there's a lot of people after he died and in recent years have sort of there's been so many re-releases about him. Brad Pitt did a documentary about him.
Oh, I didn't know that.
There's also he's been absolutely lauded by everybody.
Yeah.
And I think since that, there's a lot of artists who've been hugely influenced by him. And I think a lot of what you hear and why it doesn't maybe seem dated is because this kind of music is, again, very popular right now. It's very, and his style. And if we think back to anyone who listened to episode 1 of our podcast, I introduced The Tallest Man on Earth as the artist I love. And he's mentioned Drake as an influence, and I can totally hear that in the guitar tone. The the way he picks at the guitar, the way he's kind
Nick
of
Drake, just to be clear, not Drake. Just want to make sure we're not.
Yeah, Drake. Slightly different.
Yeah,
that would be an interesting album. Though.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's one of the reasons I think maybe it doesn't sound dated. And when we talked about last week, things that say Nas has influence, such as, I mean, it ranges from everyone, but I've heard stuff like Will Smith that's got some Nas influence, and that has gone in a cheesy way, whereas maybe what Nick Drake is influenced is a really sort of interesting genre of music that's still around at the minute and very popular.
Yeah.
So I think, I mean, I'm going to go back a little bit there and say, to be honest, this album it's not as good as Pink Moon, but it also felt a little bit stunted to me in the context of this playlist, because I felt like we were listening to all sorts of varied stuff. And because this is older, and it wasn't as immediate to me, but the more time I spent with it, it's a really beautiful piece of work. And Riverman and A Man in a Shed were the 2 songs I really picked out. And yeah, it's great. It's up there with the better classic albums that we've picked as a group so far.
So here's our moment of agreement then. Everyone seems to like it. Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. So there's one left to talk about then, I think, of the original set, which is Jay Som's Everybody Works. Fran, go for it.
Okay. So this was the other that I considered for the best opener, because I think it's got an interesting opening with a song called Lipstick Stains, which I think is about 1.5 minutes long. And yeah, it's interesting. It was a real grower on me, this album. Like the first few listens, it kind of passed me by, and I was a bit disappointed because these are actually one of the bands that are supporting the National when me and Nick go to see them in Dublin later this year. So I really wanted to really love it, and when I first listened to it, I didn't, but I think because it seemed quite simplistic. But the more time I spent with it, actually, it's quite a complex album, and there's quite a lot of variation on there, and I really started to get into it, and I think there's a lot of layers to it. So obviously I was starting to get into it. I started to read a bit about it and found out she's she records everything on her own in a bedroom. She plays all of the instruments.
Really?
She does it all herself. Cool. It's so the more I read about it and the more I got into it, I really quite. She's 22, and I watched a few live videos. She's just very unassuming, and I started to find her really very interesting. And I think even though there's a real mixture of styles, every song's identifiably her. So yeah, by the end, it was arguably my favourite on the playlist. Definitely the one I think I'll probably spend most time with in the future.
Either that or the Go Team, anyway.
Yeah, the Go Team. Yeah, I mean, I might see if I can find some way of using it as like to clean my house or something as a rag, but I wouldn't spend the time with it other than that. But the Jay Som, I think really interesting. And yeah, I think I'll definitely be spending more time with it. But yeah, I'm not sure. Who wants to go next?
Matt, go for it.
I felt like this was the album I'd probably... I just wasn't impressed by it.
You're surprising me all over the place today, Matt. I've got to be honest.
I was quite bored by it. I've heard her in interviews before, and I've heard like one of her songs before, and I thought I was going to be really into this because it's like got kind of trademarks for what I normally like. It's got some like floating guitars and like the soft singing, and it's kind of gentle, and it should be a guaranteed win for me. But I just didn't feel like only on a couple of songs did they did it actually build to something. And then like I did really like the bus song, I think it is.
Yeah, the bus song's great.
Yeah, but that was because it had a bit more like drive about it, I think, and it felt like it was going somewhere. But that's it would be it's the kind of thing that I'd love to if I went to a cafe. This place has really good ambience because they're playing this.
But I think this is kind of goes with what I was saying. As in, on the first few times I listened to it, it really did pass me by, and I think I would have if I'd only had 3 listens to this album. I'm not saying that's what you've done, but I think I would agree with what you're saying. But I think the more time I spent with it, the more I heard there was more interest in there. But then,
I kept getting back to it, and then getting more frustrated that it wasn't more. And there was one of the things that I really hate artists that do this is several of the songs they faded out on. I just that's
it's fade outs. That's great.
It's a big no.
That's a lot of music.
That's such an abstract thing to rule out.
Well, it just feels like you've done half the song, and it's just like you can't be bothered to finish it off.
I love that mentality. That's amazing.
And it's just and so like they were.
Would you rather it ended like the Go Team, where they just played everything for 10 minutes, batted your head against it?
Oh well, at least it was in your face. It was doing something. This just felt like it just felt like it washed over me, and then nothing stayed with me.
Okay, well, so we got 1 vote for, 1 vote pretty strongly against. I'm actually going to sit somewhere in the middle. I think I sort of felt like the album is very, very, to me, a very indie kids type album in some ways, and I wasn't keen on the bits that were like that. But interestingly, when Matt says the bus song is one of his better songs on the album, I actually preferred all the slower songs really than the faster ones. The faster ones came across like not so great versions of other classic indie bands, but Lipstick Stains that opened the album, that short song, I thought was actually really quite intriguing. I also really like Bedhead, which is one that's further down the track listing near the end. I thought that worked really well. There are some that are faster, like I really... Yeah, so there's One More Time Please I wasn't a big fan of, and 1 Billion Dogs, both those songs together I wasn't really into. I didn't like the energy of them. I noted as well that on the 1 Billion Dogs song there was some really weird things with the mix that were quite irritating to the ear, I found, but that's getting very quite into the weeds. But yeah, so I don't know. I sort of felt like there's potential for more, but that would be good. But I kind of want it to be fairly go down the more gentle route than try and be more aggressive, because I don't think it really suited Jay Som well. And I didn't do any of the research as usual. Like Fran always does reads all the articles and all this stuff, and I have no context for that for my knowledge of her.
Read, do you, so?
I don't like reading anyway. So I never do that. So, but no, I just this in itself, it's standalone. Like I feel like there's bits that work, but there's a fair bit that wasn't too great for me. So yeah, that's all I have to say. I think it's not one that really drew me in terribly. So I'm not like aggro about it, but I thought there's things in there that might be able to be developed further in future stuff. Maybe I'll come back to it.
So can I just ask, Matt, is the Go Team your favourite on this list? Because it sounds like the one you've been most positive about. I just want to check if I've to
be honest,
right.
it wasn't. I would have said Dinosaur Jr. was my favourite on the list.
Well, we've skipped ahead now.
You can't say that. Just broken a cardinal rule. You can't do that. No, it's fine. Just we try and basically what we try and do is build up the person who's going to talk about their why I love, so that they believe the other two people are going to be supportive, and then when they poured their heart out about the reason they absolutely love something, then you can take them apart and just really knife to the heart kind of work, So anyway, but of the other 5, what would you say was your favourite?
Nick Drake.
Okay.
God, you two. Get a room.
Maybe. I don't, yeah.
Fucking hell.
Will you stop swearing?
Sorry, I can't help it. I'm so surprised by all of you today. I do understand the Jay Som sort of criticisms, though. I do get it. I can see it washes over you a little bit. I think it's just about spending a bit of time and, working hard on it, and not just, letting it pass you by while you sit in your lab or whatever.
I just think there's better people doing better stuff that's similar.
Right.
And so,
that's probably true. And
so I'd rather go and put their album on than listen to this. But I will keep an eye out for her. Cause
she's interesting. I think
it's like she's young, and to do that from the background you've given us, do that, it's promising.
That kind of runs a little bit across this. If you're on this playlist, I think with Princess Nokia, for me, with Rhye and with Jay Som, I think there's more potential there than actual realization. But for me, they're all really interesting albums. That I'm not going to say the same about Nick Drake, obviously, because he's not going to be going much further. But it is a similar thing. It was a first album that maybe he did better as, later. So I think you've seen a lot of that in this playlist.
Yeah, I've got to go with Nick Drake as my favourite of these 5 as well. That was not difficult, to be honest. Yeah, I didn't find the list that strong, but Nick Drake was carried it quite easily. Yeah, so
I don't know if I could pick a favourite. I think I liked Rhye, I liked Nick Drake, I liked Princess Nokia, I liked Jay Som. None of them completely knocked me out, so there's not a favourite, but I think they're all very strong albums. Go Team was not.
Not really. Okay, so let's move on to the What I Love. So I'm going to introduce Dinosaur Jr. And I won't give a ton of context because people can Google that in about 2 seconds. But I'll just say that this album, Living All Over Me, was their second album. And it's their first on a bigger record label. And it was released in 87, and the band are going from about the mid-80s, and they came out of a hardcore band called Deep Wound, and there were 3 members of the band, Jay, Lou, and Murph. Lou is also known as Lou Barlow from Sebadoh, and I've talked about Sebadoh in a previous podcast, so Lou Barlow is the bass player. Bass player from Dinosaur Jr. is the person who became Sebadoh later on, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. But so I'm going to talk about it in 2 ways, basically. I'm going to talk about why this band should mean something to people listening, why I think they're important, and then why they're important to me, which is, there's some overlap, but there's quite a few differences as well. So I think in terms of why people should care about this album, there's a couple of expressions that were floating around at the time this album came out and in the few years after it that I think were really important to articulate why this band matters. One was a phrase that Jay Mascis used when he described what the band was trying to do around the time of this album's release and the one following it, Bug, which is in a way even more famous. Which was the phrase "ear bleeding country." That was what he was attempting to achieve, ear bleeding country. And I think that's really sums up well the crux of what this band offered that was very, very new at the time and became something incredibly important later on, which is a sort of mix of aggression and vulnerability at the same time, in a sort of incredible kind of crushing together of something so loud, something so distorted, something so energetic, and yet something so fragile. And in fact, this band were actually the loudest band on earth for a short period of time. They had a Guinness Book World Record thing for a little while there as the loudest band. And they used to take, this is just a total aside, I'm not going to get into endless stories about this band, but they used to take, on tour with them, Jay Mascis used to take 22 300-watt 4x12 Marshall cabs with him on tour, because he wanted to be able to mic a 2,000-seater auditorium without a PA, because he was always annoyed how they turned him down. So he just used to take 22 guitar amps with him and play them all at once. So it's a pretty incredible thing. So that's one of the phrases, "ear bleeding country." The second is an expression from an album, one of the songs, I think actually from Bug, but the expression is "what a mess," and it became something that was talked about a lot at the period this album came out and the next album came out. It was really an album with sound that was very broken, very kind of destroyed and disorganized and fragmented, and very frenzied as well. So in the mix of this frenzy with these, and especially, for example, in the guitar solos, which always feel to me, because there's so much distortion, like he's pulling them out of, and there's actually a song called Tar Pit, pulling them out of a pit of some kind of soupy mixture, trying to wrench these notes out of that sound. To make an actual piece of music out of it, which I always find to be kind of amazing. So, and the third term, which is not one I'm in love with, but I think is important, is the term grunge, because as this album came out in the few years after it, grunge took over the world, and it was really Dinosaur Jr. and only a few others who really began that process of building what grunge became. So Nirvana, for example, absolutely loved this band. We're obsessed with them. We're friendly with them. Jay Mascis was asked to join Nirvana, I think, on a couple of occasions and didn't. And Nirvana actually used to take, there was a couple of photos of Nirvana with the Dinosaur Jr. t-shirts on and stuff, because they were always trying to promote them. They always felt a little bit embarrassed that they got so much more press than Dinosaur Jr. did, which I'm not begrudging Nirvana, but still, it's interesting. And then Thurston Moore, actually, of Sonic Youth, also were really, really into Dinosaur Jr. That Sonic Youth they were friends with them. I hear, although I don't know if the story's apocryphal, that Dinosaur Jr. was signed to their label because Thurston Moore, the same label as Sonic Youth, because Thurston Moore said he would drop his deal, he would break his record deal if they didn't take on Dinosaur Jr. as well. I don't know if that's true or not, but I've read that somewhere in years past. So, and then the last thing that's important as well is the lo-fi genre, which Fran knows all about. We talked about this already. Also grew out of this. The song Polido, which was actually the original ending of the album, just like Heaven, the cover of the Cure song, which is on the end of the album, was added later. Polido was the original end of the album, and you could argue quite convincing that that's one of the first lo-fi songs that Sebadoh would ever do before Sebadoh kind of existed in a way. So that's really kind of important as well. These are the reasons why you might feel, I hope you feel that they're important, but this is not why they're important to me, or only partly why they're important to me. Because when I was got into this band, I was about 16, 17. The scene where I went to school was all metal. It was everybody I knew was really into metal. And this was such a breath of fresh air to find some music that still had the energy and aggression to sort of reflect my youthful angst, but was also at the same time not tough, trying to be tough, which I always found to be really unconvincing anyway, most of these metal bands. That this band, was willing to be vulnerable, like I said, and that really mattered. I thought that was really an incredible thing. So the name Dinosaur Jr. actually works all the way down. They were only named Dinosaur Jr. because another band called Dinosaur came along and sort of complained that they were stealing their name. But anyway, the use of the word Junior instead was added to the name after that point. It's just perfect. It sums up like this idea of this huge, violent creature, but just a little version of it, just this like little kiddie version of this creature, So it's that dichotomy, that heavy and weak at the same time. It was also my very first gig I ever went to, and I actually held out and didn't go to gigs I was offered to go to for a while, so I could go down to Brixton Academy and see him with a very good friend of mine in 93 and maybe 90,
How old were you then, Matt?
94.
93?
Yeah.
I went 4.
Oh,
Hey.
give me a break.
A few years before my first gig.
Oh, you total bastard. Okay. And then
My
obviously,
favourite part of this podcast.
and then obviously, Sebadoh were also a hugely influential band for me. One of my most important bands, in a way, possibly more important than Dinosaur Jr. to me in the end. But I wouldn't have got into them if I had not heard about Dinosaur Jr. to begin with. So that's why they mattered to me as well. And the only thing I'll say, to sort of mar this a little bit before, in case anybody else has heard other stuff, is I feel like they're still going, this band. In fact, they're playing in Manchester in the very near future. Or they were meant to be playing last weekend, weren't they? And I think it got postponed, but because Lou broke his collarbone, I think. But so he's coming. They're coming in a few weeks. But, yeah, exactly. They're getting on. But no, so they've done new stuff, and I think they've reformed after a sort of acrimonious breakup, and they've done a lot of new stuff. I do not like the new stuff at all, I've got to say. I feel like they're just phoning it in. They just don't seem to be bothered, emotionally invested in what they're doing. That's my personal feeling. And this comes from somebody who absolutely loves this band, as you can hear. So I'm not saying it, I'm not happy to say it, but it's not great. So I recommend this album, though people haven't heard it, the next album, Bug, which is actually a little bit more consistent maybe, but hasn't got some of the highs. And the first album, Dinosaur, is also on Homestead, is also a fantastic album. So those three are all really, really great. So I will now shut up and get out of the way, and you can have at it. So who wants to go first?
I'll go. I'll just start. I thought they were terrible, Nick. No, I didn't. I was fully prepared. I was really, really, really pleasantly surprised.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I didn't think they were terrible at all, because previously you've introduced Sebadoh and Quasi, and I know I didn't get on board really with them, and I know obviously Sebadoh, Dinosaur Jr., there's a lot of connection there, but I think the difference...
You didn't hate Sebadoh, did you? It was Quasi you were not into.
I didn't hate Sebadoh, no,
Quasi
but
I
didn't love Sebadoh. I came away from Sebadoh feeling like I'd listened to something that I may have liked if I'd got into it when I was younger.
I remember you saying now.
But I didn't,
it was an age.
I would probably never be listening to again.
Right, I see.
I appreciate them, but they weren't for me. I think the difference is the energy for me. I mean, I think there's so much energy in this album. And also just the abandon and the joy. They just seem to love what they're doing. And that's interesting to hear what you say about how they're phoning in a little bit now, because for me, having listened to this album, that kind of goes against what they are to me.
Totally.
They're a band that absolutely loves what they're doing in this album and just lets loose, and I like that.
One of the problems actually is that Jay is so good at guitar now that it's not difficult enough. He's not challenged by it. I've heard various guitarists talk about how they need to be able to push themselves, and he could do it literally with his eyes closed.
I think there's so many bands that come back though because there's money available, isn't there? And maybe they're
Yeah, I don't know if it's money or what, but they're still going, and I kind of wish they would rest.
But for me, I mean, I'd say there's a couple of songs. Tar Pit and The Lung were two that really stood out for me. Tar Pit particularly. But I could have lived without and it's interesting to hear you say it wasn't always on the album. I could have lived without the Cure cover.
Okay.
I don't know why you would take a song like that by the Cure that was perfect as it was, and then
it is a great song. I'm not disputing the Cure song is fantastic. I just because I love that at the time I heard it first. I loved the massive weight of it because it was another extreme. It was even more extreme. I mean, the Cure, absolutely the voice of delicacy, aren't they? So to have that delicate voice and then have this massive,
but it felt just to me remarkable. A little bit like, and please don't take this too offensively because I'm not comparing any of these bands, but it felt a little bit like when Robbie Williams covered "Back for Good" by Take That and just shouted on the chorus. I was kind of because I loved it up to that, and then I saw Just Like Heaven. I thought, they've got a song the same name as the Cure song. That's weird. And then I just don't do that. Stop where you were, because other than that, I thought it was brilliant.
Luckily,
I was really impressed.
That's not even on the album, so we can avoid having that dispute. It's only on this remastered version. It wasn't on the original album. And the album ended with Polido, which was a kind of unraveling of the album, which I thought was really good, considering the album had so much energy all the way through the first half. It stacked towards this mental amount of energy with Sludgefest and stuff like that little furry things, that it just can't keep up that pace forever, and it has to sort of fall apart. But it's Just Like Heaven on the end. It's just like a single they've bolted onto the end, which I thought was a pity.
Yeah, it was a pity.
Anyway, so I know now I'm in safe territory somewhat because Matt already said he liked this album somewhat. But do you want to tell me more?
Yeah, I thought it was great. It was I was re-listening to the entire playlist yesterday, and it was getting towards the end of the day, and it was a snow day here, so I'd been working on my laptop, and this album started just as I poured myself some wine, and it just felt
It doesn't feel like you should be drinking wine to it though. It feels like you should be drinking Bell's whiskey with a straw.
With a Mickey Mouse bendy straw.
But it just was it was so perfect in that moment, and then it just kind of let loose, and the way that they're just rocking out was like you were saying, the youthful energy was very nostalgic for me, because it was reminded me of going to see bands when I was a teenager. But
you didn't know them before this though, is that right or not?
No.
Okay.
I'd heard one song, which was Start Chopping.
Okay, that's a much later one. It's actually not with the original lineup either, so that's a little bit of a change of direction for them when they did
basically telling you that doesn't count.
No, I'm just saying, I don't hate that song actually, but that's very different from this stuff.
I also, after hearing that song, and then I was like, it should be fun, and then hearing the actual album, I can tell it's different from that, and it was 10 times better, I think.
Yeah.
And a particular song that stuck out to me that I've written down was Raisins, because I really liked the way the rhythm of it felt almost a bit like Fleetwood Mac.
Okay. Interesting. I never would have thought that, but okay, interesting.
It was really fun. And I also like The Lung, because the way they changed the pacing of the song in the middle.
Great. Yep. Wow.
Yeah,
well, now I'm staggered because I was expecting at least Fran to hate this album, so I'm really staggered, and he was expecting to hate it as well.
Yeah, I was. So. No, it's like I say with Sebadoh and Crazy. I didn't hate Sebadoh, but just I thought I have dreaded the moment when you put this album on the page, because you've spoken to me about this band a lot, and I don't mind. I generally, being honest here, I don't mind putting down an album that I think someone likes but isn't that bothered about, or the new albums we talk about. But when you're talking about something that someone really loves, to then just have to say it's shit, it's never a nice thing to do. So it's nice to not have to do that.
But you do, won't you?
Oh yeah, I had to do it when you put Quasi all over. That needed to be done.
No.
But I would do it. I believe in honesty on this podcast. I feel that we should say how we feel. So
right. Honesty over friendship. That's nice.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a nice mantra.
Yeah.
So sorry, Matt. Did we cut you off though? Are you still going?
No. I would say it's one of the favorite artists I hadn't really listened to, and then listen to because of the playlist you guys have been putting together.
Great, fantastic.
And so
You're one of us now, mate. It's not just us guys anymore. Come on.
Well, yeah.
Come into the group. You slagged off several albums tonight. You're definitely part of it now.
And you're only 4,000 miles away. What's the big deal? So no problem. Yeah, great.
Yeah, it's cool.
Okay, so I think that gets us to the end of the 6. So let's talk about what we're doing next time. I think, is Matt in charge now? For this
Matt
one
will be in
coming
charge
out?
of the next
Matt's
one.
in charge and host
Yeah,
this
I'm
time.
gonna be in charge.
So you can go at the end then. So Fran, what are you going to be going through?
Well, I think we should
first
mention
we're gonna
first.
say
So we did a Green Man Festival playlist last year because I was going, and this year I'm going to the End of the Road Festival instead. So we're doing an End of the Road Festival.
It's all about Fran.
It's just whatever I choose, apparently.
Nice.
So everybody on the next playlist will be playing at End of the Road. I've picked 2 artists I've not listened to before. They're both 2018 albums. One's by Ezra Furman, and it's called Transangelic Exodus. And one's by, now, please don't judge this band on the name, but they're called Soccer Mommy. And the album's called Clean.
All right. I'm going to go with Gruff Rhys, formerly of Superfur Animals, maybe still of Superfur Animals, with his album Set Fire to the Stars. Although I will mention that from what I can tell, that's a couple of years old, actually, but it's the newest thing that's on Spotify of his. So we'll go with that. And then Proto Martyr with Relatives in Descent.
Okay, and so for the classic album, we're going for one of the headliners, and so that's Yo La Tengo. And I picked their album, I Can Hear the Heart Beating as One.
Beautiful name.
Yeah, we'll see. And for the introducing, I want to talk about Thief. And specifically...
Slightly cut out there. Do you want to say that name again? I think we may have just missed the... Brilliant timing.
Big Thief. Okay, great.
Big Thief. And specifically their second album, which actually came out last year. And I think it was on a number of lists for Best Album of the Year and the album's capacity. So I'm looking forward to talking about that.
So that will be going up on the playlist in the next 24 hours on Spotify. People want to follow along. I want to mention that there is a Twitter handle.
Yeah, Twitter at Picky Bastards, capital P, capital B, and obviously I share all the playlists on there and everything. We always forget to say this, so we're making a point to say it. Find us on Twitter. Follow the playlist on Spotify.
Yeah.
It'll probably make your listen more interesting if you've heard the music. So
exactly. Yeah. The podcast is on Spotify as well as on Stitcher and on Apple, iTunes Music or whatever. So
all the places.
Everywhere. So okay, that's that I think. So thanks very much. We will speak to you in about a month.
In a month.
Cheers.